directly from their website. But it is nice that if you set up your program, I think you have to set it up at least 3 weeks in advance. They will mail this package to you for free.
All right, so what does a typical club day look like for CS First? So we're going to use a 60-minute time frame here, but again, they adjust it within the agenda timer for various needs. So typically, the club day starts with the opening discussion with about 5 minutes. And this is the time where kids, we're actually starting with a reflection. So if you think about our do, reflect, apply, they're thinking about the reflection from the previous time, sort of drawing back on what they learned and what kind of project that they had together. So this is very active, the gurus leading the kids, getting them to speak up and discuss and work together. The second part after that is the showcase portion. So there's a showcase selector. It's a really neat tool that lets you randomly select up different completed projects that the kids have shared following the previous session. And kids love this part. So when the showcase selector is chosen, it'll randomly select several student projects, and kids get really excited and usually volunteer on the spot if they see that there's just one up there, because usually it selects a few and allows people to decide if they want their work to be shown. So kids are very active during this time. This is where you want to keep it very positive. Everyone, there's usually little cheers we give after a project's been selected and shown. It's also a great time to highlight interesting uses of their code. So you can actually pull up the showcase projector at the end of the previous class or the night before, so you can jump in and look for different things. Say, this project had a really neat use of loops, or look how they used this that way. So again, thinking about learning, reflecting, and applying at the start as well as the end.
It should also be noted that if a child does not feel comfortable sharing, you do not have to share it. There at the beginning, especially if they've never had any computer science or Scratch experience, they may not want that first or second one shown, but it tends by about halfway through the club, they all want to have an opportunity to have it shown. So if a child does not seem receptive to having it shown, just pass by and hope that you can pick them up towards the end of the club in one of the later ones.
And they, as mentioned, they pick several out of there so that you have several options when you're going through in case a child doesn't want to share. Now, the vast majority of the time spent in a club day is work time. So kids actively working and building their projects, watching their videos, and building within Scratch. So at all times, when you're walking around as a guru or a host, you should see 2 tabs up on the computer screen, one for CS First and one for their Scratch project. This is also a great time for gurus and other volunteers to walk around and ask kids questions, get engaged with them. And they provide tips within the website on how to do that, how to step up and ask them how they're doing and how they're working. Again, when they're doing this, we encourage youth interaction first when they have questions, but this is where you might have your solution guide and coming through and helping certain spots. We have some other tips as we move on later in the talk about ways to help youth if they're stuck. Finally, you have the closing discussion. So the last 10 minutes or so of the activity, they provide a shout out board where kids take sticky notes and they write different things that they loved that day or what they're proud of. And you can pick a few of those to mention in the class. This is also a time where we talk about and do more reflection. So what was the challenge? What was challenging about today? How did you work through that challenge? Where did you get stuck? And youth provide different feedback on how they were able to get through it. So it's a great, again, reflect and apply that we can, that debriefing that we have within the 4-H world.
Okay, before I start on this, I think I'm going to answer Sherry's question in the chat box when we talk about through the slide. But as far as Stacy, I think we're going to make the PowerPoints available for download. At the end, we have a Qualtrics link to gather some information if you're interested. But Let's talk about what the needs are, what kind of equipment you need. So classroom setup, this is really, you need to have computers with the internet, and it's a one-to-one computing recommended. So headphones for video listening, because imagine if you have a computer lab or a mobile computer lab, you're set up in a classroom of 25 listening to videos at the same time. That can be a bit overwhelming. So headphones and a computer. Sherry, your comment says something about Microsoft Surfaces or iPads. Well, iPads right now do not work, and that is a Scratch issue. The Scratch program is set up so it is Flash based, so it's going to have to be on a computer. However, they are moving to a 3.0 version. Is that the right term, Jen? Later this summer, that will not be Flash based. So that should open up some possibilities for different technology to be used. You should be able to use Surfaces. Those that are part of the Google grant from National 4-H Council, we're giving Chromebooks, but you do need computers with internet. Chrome is the best browser for using. You can use Internet Explorer for whatever reason. Firefox, I tend to have issues getting in, especially the Scratch website with it. So having Google Chrome is recommended for this. Some challenges we've had in West Virginia, and I think Jen can say this has been in other states as well, is the internet access. So what about, there is Scratch offline. So you could have that if you have a computer or a device that has enough memory that can house it, and you would have to have the preloaded starter projects on there. One thing that we've had issues with is the number of people on there at one time. So you can, and one of the workarounds our county faculty have come up with is that those videos, you can download them ahead of time. Instead of having the kids work independently at their own pace, have it showing the main video on a whiteboard or a projector screen in the front of the room, and the kids are then solely working in Scratch on their computer, and they're not trying to stream the videos and work in Scratch has been successful. Also, they found success in that, in the kids being able to stay on task and work through that. As far as preparing, I completely recommend going in and kind of walking through it ahead of time, just like the kids would. So you can go in, watch the videos, do exactly what the kids are doing so that you feel comfortable because you've experienced it before the kids did it.
And I'll just add, in terms of a classroom preparation, if you're going to go into a school, try it ahead of time with the teacher, and because they do have often firewalls that'll block certain sites, and you just need them to set it up that there's permission for that particular website to be able to use it.
And you might need passwords or passcodes to get into their internet and or their computer, whatever you're kind of using as the guru or the volunteers in the front. So yeah, definitely checking with if you're using it in a school or library to make sure that you can make all of the websites that you need to work, before the kids are there. The other thing to think about is these pre-tests. Oh, you've got it on there. It's yours, Jen.
Oh, sure.
No, it is still mine. No, it's still mine. I'm sorry. I hadn't flipped over here. So the instructional videos, I think I already talked a little bit about. Those add-on videos are great. So everyone kind of does the one thing together, and then they can really branch out and find independence and mastery in their own ways using those add-on videos, and depending upon how much time they have. You do have to have 2 tabs open, and that can be a challenge for the kids. However, if you do go with the one video projector in the front, and the kids are kind of working solely on Scratch, that keeps them from toggling back and forth between the 2 browsers there at the beginning until they kind of move into the add-on videos. However, it's a skill set they're going to have to learn, so we're teaching some workforce skills here in terms of technology while having a lot of fun. The pre-tests, they do take a good bit of time. Jen's talking about a 60-minute or 75-minute class period. keep in mind that the pretest, that's going to add on to that very first class. So you may have to go in and kind of just get their account set up in the pretest the first time, and maybe play around a little bit with one of those one-time activities like the Google logo to get their kind of wet their whistle, and then come back and really start that first lesson maybe the next time. One thing that our county educators have found is that they found that the pretests weren't necessarily, we have a lot of folks using this with 4th and 5th graders, and they thought that it was a little above their age appropriate in terms of the language in it. And so instead of just saying, here, do the pretest, and when you're done, move to the next video, they often read the questions aloud to the whole group and kind of did it as a group together, the kids answering on their own computer, but the facilitator reading them so that there was understanding of what it was that they were answering on those pretest questions. Teacher volunteer support, we know this with everything, not just computer science. The more volunteers that you have that can kind of be walking around and assisting with the kids, the better. So more eyes and hands. You'd have to make, troubleshooting any issues that may arise with the websites and or the technology that you're using, the devices. And this last one, student interest. Some of our county educators, this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but one of the things that they have tried to kind of the learning experience from this has been, hey, we're looking at different things that could lead to career possibilities. And if computer science isn't your thing, you might not want to pursue that as a career later in life. And so it's just another learning tool. We all don't enjoy sports. We all don't enjoy math or English. And it's just kind of looking at what is it you want to do later on in life. And computer science just may not be some of these kids' career paths, and that's okay that they've learned this early on before they've actually gone to study it in college and then realized that they're not interested.
So as we mentioned a couple of times, active youth within the CS First atmosphere is really a goal here. So youth teaching youth, which is also something we do a lot in 4-H, which is wonderful. So throughout the process, throughout the classes and clubs, encourage youth to talk to one another and to ask their neighbor first if they have a question. So this both builds confidence in the youth that are able to answer, and it also fosters collaboration. However, they're not always going to be able to answer questions, so that's where the gurus come in next and walking around and facilitating. Now, I'll fully admit, I ran one of these clubs as our inaugural 4-H Code Club a couple weeks ago, and there were a couple parts where kids had questions and I just wasn't sure what the problem was. In every class, and this is, almost happens every time, you've got a couple youth who just really understand CS very quickly. They've either had experience with it or it's just intuitive. These are great to use as your go-to individuals to help troubleshoot specific questions. So when I got to that problem, I just said, hey, Helen, can you come over here and help answer this question? Because I'm not sure what we're doing wrong here. It really boosted her confidence as a leader, as well as helped me get through the problem. Now, this is where, again, as a 4-H, team leaders with some, even if limited experience, can not only help out within the class, but once they've taken a class, we highly recommend using those as gurus for the next class. In fact, there are many states that are already doing this, where these CS First clubs are actually being led by team leaders, as well as other volunteers in the environment. But it's really the team leaders who are taking the stage and leading it on. And we all know that youth respond so well to older youth that are leading through a program like that. And they get more motivated to be involved when someone closer to their own age is teaching it. Now, this is also a lead-in to our National Youth Science Day Challenge, which in 2018 will be computer science. Google is assisting on the 2018 NYSD, and there will be a CS First similar online component to this year's challenge. So they are looking for ways to offer incentives for 4-H team leaders to possibly lead CS First activities within the NYSD month of October. Plus, you know, if you're starting to look at this now with yourselves and your other volunteers and your educators, you're getting a head start on learning this environment prior to NYSD. So some ways you can use CS First in your state. I'll just tell you about what we've done here in West Virginia. So far, we have 31 CS First clubs that are either completed or in progress. That's between October to right now. Those are in 9 different counties. So most of those are in-school clubs, but we also have one after school, one 4-H spin club, one 4-H community club doing a CS First club, as well as the one that I ran at Code Camp. So in that, we were able to hit about half of the activities during Code Camp, and the kids were open to finish the rest on their own at home. We're also developing plans for our big summer month. We do a lot of camping here in West Virginia, so we're looking at ways to run clubs within our summer camping program. And we've got one county who's training librarians to lead those clubs as summer programs in their county.
Okay, exhibition. So we're getting close on time. There's a great chat there from Idaho in the chat box, but I want to go ahead and get through these parts, and then we can open the floor to talk about how other folks are using it. And I definitely want folks to read that piece from Idaho. But, you know, if you run the full piece of curriculum, you are at minimum doing 8 to 10 hours of program time. So let's talk about how this is very comparable to what our kids are doing if they're filling out the traditional hard copy project book. Now, each state's going to be very different. I do know that a lot of states have what's called a self-determined or a you decide project. So while they're doing these wonderful activities, the educational components are there, it may have to kind of fall into those categories or into that project book format, depending upon what your state's land-grant university will allow for that traditional 4-H project work. So in some states, they just have the youth print out the code and have screenshots of some of the components. And then in, you know, another method is doing some screencasting through programs. Here, we've been using Screencast-O-Matic, just the free version. And so, Jen, if you want to go ahead and advance, I could show you. This is a copy of a kid in the northern panhandle of our state who last summer did the first Discovering Computer Science and Programming Through Scratch project book that's available through Shop 4-H. They just made a poster. It won at their county level, so it came onto the state fair. And you can see they kind of did some screenshots of their code as well as what the screen looked like while that code was going on. And they put together a poster. And at the state fair, which I'm in charge of the display, we don't have a room for all of the hundreds of posters or trifold displays that are turned in at the county level. That's really great for a county fair that may not have technology, and they have plenty of space to hang these. At the state fair, we do not, so we have to take images of them and then digitally display them at kiosks at the state fair, which then lends itself well to the next slide, which is the screencasting. Because if I have a computer available, then I can just actually take a screencast of what it is that the child did and showcase their projects electronically on a computer screen at that exhibit hall. So you can see that the one screencast up in the corner, I believe, is the first activity in the storytelling theme. Those were 5th grade students at one of our counties that did those. And then the one down in the corner was one from Code Camp, where we had taken and started a starter project that was specific to the state of West Virginia. We have our little PRT car in the corner, and it goes on a trip around the state, and there's about 7 different preloaded places in the state, and you can see that they go around and they talk about these different places, and then some kids put in their own things to highlight their own communities that they came from, and it was pretty cool.
So National 4-H encourages us to share our work, to show what we've been doing, and there's 2 ways to do that. There's actually a Scratch 4-H studio that National 4-H has that kids can share their work to, and all of them are displayed together. If you're displaying youth work or work that you're doing or giving a shout out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, you can use the hashtag 4HCS Pathway. We will be sharing our slides, and we'll have a link where you can obtain that. So this information will be there, so you don't have to memorize it right now. If you are one of the 22 states, you have a contact person who, I'm sure they really would like to know if you're doing this work so they can report it. We have reporting needs for the 4HCS pathway, and so they will need to know the numbers you're working with, and they might have a short survey, especially for youth taking the full 6 hours of your activity. So I have that list here, and again, that'll be provided in the slides should you want those through our link. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you to those who provided training and resources for us, that being Google, National 4-H Council, Utah State University Extension, as well as NAA 4-HA for providing the platform to talk to you today. And we're going to open up the rest of the time for discussion and questions. And while we're doing that, I'll just say that the link that you can visit to obtain and gain access to the additional resources, as well as we're opening up a 2-hour hands-on online workshop. If you want to learn more and get some actual cyber hands-on experience with this, you can sign up to do so at the same URL. Questions? While those are thinking about questions, so yeah, Tim from Idaho was talking about some things that they have. He'd send us the files when he gets back to his office. So hopefully we can, with his permission, share some of that as well through the URL link when you sign up. I think one of the other questions, so we hit the one about iPads and Surfaces pretty well. Again, I've been told that we will be able to use iPads once the Scratch 3.0 is available, but I don't know that 100%. That's about 90% right now.
Jen and Jenny, while everybody's thinking about their questions, just let them know that you can unmute yourself to ask your question live, or if you want to chat it in the text box to what's on the right side of my screen, we can help field those. So as you're typing, just want to remind everybody that this is a recorded presentation, which is super helpful because we're able to go back and rewatch and look at some of these slides again, as well as post some resources from Jen and Jenny.
Great. Yes, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding us, Jeffrey.
Yeah, no problem. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, I'll remind everybody that you will get a short evaluation about today's webinar. That's going to come to the email that you used whenever you registered for today's session. Please take a few minutes to fill that out and provide some feedback for our virtual professional development series. And if you have questions after today's webinar, we can share Jen and Jenny's contact information, and I know that they'll be excited to continue help to promote Google partnership and CS First. Thank you, Jen and Jenny, so much for joining us today. I think I can speak for everybody that we all learned something new. And I coordinate our state conferences here in Georgia, and I'm already thinking about ways that we could do this at some of our 4-H events.
Absolutely. We highly recommend it. It's been a transformative program in the state of West Virginia. So the more states involved, we'd love to help people get started with this as well.
That's awesome. Well, we thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you have a great afternoon, and be on the lookout for that short evaluation.